You think I wanted this? Gloria Ben's voice cut through the hospital hallway, sharp enough to stop movement. A nurse froze near the medication cart. A doctor slowed mid-step. You think I woke up one day and chose him? She said, turning fully now, eyes wet but fierce. Look at my son. Silas Connor stood a few feet away, hands at his sides, suit pressed, face controlled. He said nothing. Gloria stepped closer to the glass wall separating the hallway from the room. Machines hummed softly behind it. A small boy lay on the bed, chest rising unevenly, wires taped to skin too young for pain like this. Look at him, she repeated, before you open your mouth again. Silas followed her gaze. For the first time since he arrived, his jaw tightened. Not fear, not panic, something quieter. He stayed silent. A nurse cleared her throat. No one moved. This isn't gossip, Gloria said. This isn't business. This is a child. Her hands shook, but her voice held. Silas finally spoke, low and even. We should talk privately. Gloria laughed once. Short, bitter, no. You don't get quiet rooms anymore. The hallway stayed still. Every ear leaned in. A doctor stepped forward, voice careful. Ms. Ben, we need to keep this area clear. Gloria didn't turn. Her eyes stayed on the room. He fainted twice this week, she said, speaking to no one and everyone. Once at school, once in my arms. He asked me if his heart was tired. Her throat tightened. She swallowed. What do you say to a 5-year-old when his body starts failing him? Silas shifted his weight. The movement was small, controlled, but it was there. The surgery window is closing, the doctor added. We need confirmation today. Gloria finally faced Silas again. That's why you're here, she said. Not for me, not for headlines, for him. She pointed toward the glass. You get to walk away, she continued. You get choices. He doesn't. Silas looked past her, back at the boy. Longer this time. The hallway felt tight, like the walls had edged closer. Gloria's voice dropped. So before anyone judges me, ask yourself this. What would you trade for your child to breathe tomorrow? She looked straight ahead, not blinking. If you were standing where I am, she said, what would you sign? Silas finally stepped closer, just one pace. I'm not here to argue, he said quietly. Gloria nodded slowly. Of course not. You're here to be seen. 2 nurses pretended to check a chart nearby, ears angled their way. You don't need to say much, right? Gloria said, voice sharper now. You just show up in your polished shoes and let everyone believe you're a savior. Silas didn't flinch. You fund a few wings, sit on a few boards, and people call you noble. She took a step forward. But you're still using my son as a condition. He met her gaze. Calm. You agreed. She laughed again, low and bitter. You said I was the only one who told you no. Silas said nothing. Gloria leaned in, tone lower now. Then let's be honest for once. You don't want a wife. You want an agreement. He didn't deny it. That boy in there, she said, gesturing without looking, is not a negotiation. Silas replied, he's the reason we're both standing here. That's where you're wrong, she said. I'm here because I have to be. You're here to control what the world sees. A beat passed. She stepped back. Let's not confuse the two. A soft beep echoed from the room. Gloria turned again, eyes locking on the boy inside. A nurse adjusted his fourth. Manuel shifted slightly, his lips parting in sleep. His small chest rose, then paused too long before falling again. Gloria's hands curled into fists at her sides. I tuck him in every night, she said, her voice calm now, steady from practice. I read the same story twice, because he always pretends he didn't hear the ending. She turned her head slightly toward Silas, not fully facing him. I whisper things I don't believe, so he'll feel safe, she continued. Because what else do you do when your child can't run without losing breath? Silas looked through the glass. What story? Gloria's jaw tensed. The one where the lion wins, Silas said nothing. The beep from inside the room steadied. She stepped forward and placed a hand gently on the glass. "You think I care what people call me?" she said. "Gold digger, opportunist, fake wife. Let them talk." She turned her head fully toward him now. "But don't speak about my son like he's part of a bargain." Silas nodded once. No defense, no comeback, only silence. The hallway stayed quiet. No more movement, no more whispers. Just the hum of machines and the weight of what wasn't being said. Gloria lowered her hand from the glass. Her shoulders stayed straight, but her face was pale with fatigue. She had nothing left to explain. "I didn't choose this," she said one last time, softer now. "But I'll survive it, because I have to." Silas stood still. From behind the glass, Manuel stirred again. This time, his eyes opened slightly, blinking into the room light. He saw them both. He lifted a hand, weak but certain, and tapped the glass once. Gloria smiled. A small one, the kind you save for the people who matter. Then she faced forward. "If you ever had to choose between pride and your child's life," she said, almost to herself, "you'll understand why I signed that paper." She turned and walked down the hallway without looking back. Silas remained. His hands, usually so still, closed into fists at his sides. If you've ever had to make an impossible choice to protect your family, drop your story in the comments. And if you believe no parent should ever face this alone, tap the like button. The bus pulled up at 5:47 a.m. Gloria stood on the corner with a lukewarm coffee in one hand and Manuel's lunchbox in the other. Her apron was already tied at her waist. She had 10 minutes to clock in at the school kitchen. She kissed her son's forehead before walking him across the street to the neighbor's door. "Same time, Miss Cheryl," she said with a tight smile. Cheryl nodded, took Manuel's hand and led him inside. He didn't complain. He never did. By 6:10 a.m., Gloria was behind the industrial stove, stirring oatmeal for 120 elementary kids. Her back ached by 8. By noon she was scrubbing down trays, replacing gloves, dodging questions about looking tired again. At 2 p.m. she caught the second bus, 45 minutes across town. She changed her shoes in the back alley before entering the office building where she cleaned 4 floors, 5 nights a week. She'd finish by 9, get home by 10, shower with the last bit of hot water, and check on Manuel before sleeping for 4 hours. She kept a notebook with his medications, vitamins, fluids, meals. He got the best of her, always. What she didn't talk about, what she barely admitted to herself, was the fatigue in his eyes, the color in his cheeks fading too often, the way he now sat down halfway through walking up their apartment stairs. She told herself it was a growth phase. She told herself he was just tired like her. She didn't tell anyone else, because if she did, the cracks would show, and Gloria had learned, if you cracked, you shattered. Manuel collapsed at recess. The school nurse called Gloria's work line. Her supervisor refused to let her leave. She left anyway. By the time she reached the ER, Manuel was sitting upright, pale but awake. He asked if he could still have pizza that night. They kept him overnight for tests. The pediatric cardiologist came in the next morning, clipboard in hand, face tight with restraint. "His heart isn't pumping the way it should," he said. Gloria frowned. "You mean it's weak?" "More than that," the doctor said gently. "He has a congenital defect, likely from birth. It's gotten worse over time." Words blurred. He kept speaking. She caught phrases. Left ventricle, oxygen flow, surgical repair, time sensitive. She didn't cry. Not in front of her son. She nodded, asked questions, took notes. 3 days later, an envelope from her insurance provider landed on her kitchen counter. She opened it standing up. Coverage denied. The words were bold, sharp, cold. Experimental procedure not covered. Appeal rejected. She read it again, and again, as if the words might soften the third time around. They didn't. She sat down on the floor. Manuel was asleep in the other room. The lights buzzed overhead. A pot of rice boiled over. Her phone buzzed. Another shift. Another day. Another hallway to mop. She didn't move, because in that moment, everything had changed. Not her work ethic, not her strength, only the timeline. She didn't recognize the number when the hospital called. They asked her to stop by the administrative office after Manuel's cardiology checkup. She assumed it was about billing, maybe paperwork. She brought her worn notebook and a pen that barely worked. The office wasn't where she expected it to be. They led her to a private conference room on the top floor. Glass walls, quiet air, no clipboard nurses. A woman in a dark suit opened the door and gestured for her to enter. A man was already inside, mid-40s. Impeccably dressed, no tie, just a crisp white shirt and a jacket that probably cost more than her yearly rent. His shoes were spotless, his watch subtle but expensive. He didn't stand when she entered. He watched. "Miss Ben," he said. His voice was calm, measured. "I'm Silas Connor." She didn't sit. "You're the donor? I fund the pediatric research foundation that supports this hospital wing." She folded her arms. "Why am I here?" "Because your son's case crossed my desk," he said. She stared at him. "I'm not asking for favors." "Good," he replied, sliding a folder across the glass table. "Because I'm not offering one." She didn't reach for it. "You should read it," he added. She sat down slowly, opened the folder. Her eyes skimmed lines, legal terms, dates, conditions. Then she froze. Proposal, temporary marital arrangement, duration, 24 months. Terms, public partnership. In exchange, full medical coverage for minor dependent Manuel Ben, including surgery, recovery, and ongoing therapy. She looked up. "This is a joke." Silas didn't blink. "It's a contract." Gloria closed the folder. "You're serious?" Silas nodded once. "I need stability, a public image that reflects commitment. My board prefers a traditional family profile." She leaned forward, both hands flat on the table. "And you think a dying child makes a good excuse?" "I think your situation fits the outline of what they expect," he said without apology. "A quiet wedding, appearances at key events, mutual benefit." Her eyes flared. "My son is not leverage. I didn't say he was." "You didn't have to," she snapped. "His name is in your paperwork, page 2, right under optional photo sessions." Silas didn't react. "You'll have privacy. No intrusion. Medical bills handled. No strings after 2 years." "No strings," she echoed. "Except living in your house, playing a role, smiling for strangers while my son recovers." He met her glare. "You won't have to pretend affection." "Oh, good," she said, "because pretending to like you might have been the hardest part." She stood, shoved the folder back toward him. "You think I'm so desperate I'd sell myself?" "I think you're a mother watching a clock," he said. "And the minutes are getting louder." Her jaw clenched. "Get out of my life," she said. "I'm offering a solution," he replied calmly. "You're offering control." Gloria didn't wait for a response. She turned and walked out, slamming the door behind her. The apartment was silent. Outside, the city pulsed. Sirens, tires, distant voices, but inside, it was still. Gloria stood by the doorway of the small bedroom, arms crossed, forehead resting lightly against the frame. Manuel was asleep. He clutched a stuffed lion, worn at the edges, the same one he'd held since he was 2. His breathing was soft but uneven. Every few minutes it hitched, like his body was working harder than it should for something that should be easy. She watched him shift, his legs kicking gently under the blanket. The nightlight in the corner cast a dull orange glow across his face. Pale, sweat on his temple. He mumbled something in his sleep and turned to the wall. Gloria stepped into the room. She knelt beside the bed and brushed his curls back with one hand. He didn't stir. She leaned in, lips near his ear. "You're the only thing that matters," she whispered. Then she sat there, back against the wall, legs drawn close. Her eyes didn't leave him. Minutes passed, or hours. When the first tear rolled down her cheek, she didn't wipe it away. No sobs, No gasps, just silence, and the slow, quiet breaking of someone who had nothing else to give but still refused to stop giving. The call came at 8:42 a.m. Gloria was wiping down the counter at the school kitchen when her phone buzzed in her apron pocket. She glanced at the screen, saw the hospital name, and stepped outside without asking. "Miss Ben," the nurse said, "Dr. Ellison needs to speak with you." She pressed the phone tighter to her ear. "Is Manuel okay?" "He's stable, but you need to come in. No other details. No room for questions." By 10 a.m., she sat across from Dr. Ellison again, this time in his private office. The folder on his desk was already open. "We've waited as long as we safely can," he said, voice even, eyes concerned. "The condition is advancing. He needs surgery, now." She swallowed hard. "What happens if we wait?" "Doctor." Ellison didn't hesitate. "We don't wait." He pointed to a scan, showed her where blood flow was narrowing, explained how his oxygen levels were dropping faster, how the risk of heart failure was growing by the day. "The next fainting spell might not end like the last one," he said. Gloria sat still. "We've submitted the paperwork again," he added. "It came back the same. Denied, even with the urgency." He nodded. "They called it high risk and non-essential." Gloria felt the floor tilt slightly. "We have the surgeon, the team, but we need the funding confirmed," he finished. He didn't say what she already knew. Without money, the surgery wouldn't happen. As she left the hospital that day, the clouds were thick and low. No thunder, no drama, just pressure, a quiet, suffocating kind. The bathroom light flickered when she flipped the switch. The fan rattled faintly, dust coating the vents. Gloria stood in front of the mirror, still in her work clothes, hair pulled back, apron wrinkled from the double shift. The same uniform she wore the first time Manuel called her beautiful. She stared at her reflection. Her eyes were tired, red, not from crying, but from carrying too much for too long. "You've done everything," she whispered to herself. "You've held the line. You've stayed clean, dignified. You've earned nothing the easy way." The faucet dripped behind her. Her hands gripped the sink. She thought about the offer, about what it would cost, and what it would save. She thought about her pride, how it kept her upright, and how it would be useless at a funeral. Her breath caught. "You can hate it," she muttered, teeth clenched. "You can hate every part of it. But he doesn't deserve to die because you wanted to stay proud." The mirror stared back. She saw the fear in her own face, the helplessness, but under it, resolve. She hadn't made the call yet, but the decision was made, not for herself, for the boy down the hall who still believed his mother could fix anything. The apartment was dark, except for the glow from the kitchen clock. Gloria stood by the window, phone in hand, thumb hovering over the contact she said she'd never save. Silas Connor. She pressed call. It rang twice. He answered. No greeting, just breath and silence. "I'll do it," she said. A pause. "Ms. Ben, I'm not doing this for you," she cut in. Her tone was level, sharp. Silas said nothing. "I'll sign whatever version of that paper gets my son the surgery," she continued. "But you need to hear this clearly." He waited. "You do not own me. You do not speak for me. And if I hear his name used like currency again, I walk. And I don't care what it costs." Silas responded without delay. "Understood. You don't get to negotiate his life," she added. "I won't." Another second passed. "Send the paperwork," she said. "I'll sign by morning." She ended the call. The room was still. She didn't cry, didn't throw the phone. She stood there for another full minute before turning off the light. Down the hall, Manuel coughed in his sleep. She walked to his door and leaned against the frame, just as she had the night before, but this time she didn't feel powerless. She felt finished, not broken, not angry. Finished. The courthouse ceremony lasted 12 minutes. A clerk read the legal lines. A second woman, likely an assistant, served as a witness. Gloria wore a plain navy dress. Silas wore the same grey suit he'd worn in their first meeting. No flowers, no vows, no music. They stood side by side in front of a wooden desk. When asked if she agreed to the union, Gloria nodded once. When Silas was asked, he simply said, yes. They signed their names on the official document. The clerk congratulated them without smiling. A flash went off. One photo. For the hospital press release. Not for them. Silas offered his arm for formality's sake. Gloria ignored it. Outside, the air was heavy with late summer heat. The ride back to the estate was silent. No champagne, no words, no laughter. No one from either side was present, not even a driver. Silas drove himself. At the gate of his property, Gloria leaned her head against the window and closed her eyes. It wasn't grief. It wasn't even anger. It was something colder, the kind of resignation that sets in once you stop expecting the day to feel different. The gate opened with a low hum. The driveway curved through trimmed hedges and fountains Gloria didn't bother to admire. The house, no, the estate, stood 3 stories tall, glass and stone, wide and cold. Modern perfection. Lifeless. A woman in uniform opened the door before they reached the front step. "Mrs. Connor," she said softly. Gloria flinched at the name but nodded. Silas didn't speak. He gestured toward the staircase. "They'll show you to your room." She followed the housekeeper down a long hallway, passing artwork she didn't recognize and lighting that buzzed faintly with motion sensors. The guest wing was larger than her entire apartment. "This will be yours," the housekeeper said, opening a door. Gloria stepped inside. Cream walls, polished floors, a closet already filled with expensive clothes, tags still attached. She looked toward the window. It stretched floor to ceiling. She could see part of the garden and the edge of the pool, but she didn't feel welcome. She felt placed. Later that evening, her suitcase arrived, not by hand, but wheeled in by another staff member who didn't make eye contact. She unpacked it herself. Alone in the room, she sat on the edge of the bed. No sound, no neighbors, no humming fridge, just silence. And the faint realization that comfort doesn't always feel like safety. Dinner was at 7 sharp. The dining room looked like a boardroom with candles. A long, polished table stretched down the center. 2 plates were set, one at each end. Gloria entered quietly. Silas was already seated. "Roasted sea bass," he said, not looking up from his phone. "Staff rotates the menu weekly." She sat down, folded her napkin, took a sip of water. The silence settled fast. Forks clinked. Nothing else. Halfway through the meal, she finally spoke. "Do we have to do this every night?" Silas looked up. "The table. This performance." He put the phone down. "It's not a performance. It's structure. Structure without purpose is empty," she replied. He didn't answer. The next morning, she passed him in the hallway. He nodded once. No words. By day 3, they had established a routine of avoidance. Staff coordinated everything between them. Meals were scheduled, not shared. Rooms were assigned. Boundaries made physical. At night, her door stayed locked. Silas never tried to open it, never knocked. Gloria appreciated the distance, but resented the cold. No arguments, no missteps. Just 2 people living in the same house like strangers under contract. Not partners, not enemies. Just quiet roles written in ink. Neither of them had the strength to tear up. Yet, Manuel arrived 3 days later. The hospital approved a temporary discharge so he could rest at home before the procedure. A nurse accompanied him, and his favorite blanket came along too, blue, frayed, with a faded lion sewn at the corner. Gloria met him at the front door, crouched low, arms open. He clung to her, head on her shoulder. "Is this a hotel?" he asked, looking up at the ceiling. "No," she said softly. "It's where we're staying for a while." He pointed toward the staircase. "Do we live with the man from the hospital?" Gloria's arms tightened. "He's helping." Manuel's brows furrowed. "Is he your friend?" She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Something like that. That night, Gloria read him a story in the guest room they'd prepared for him. She tucked him in, kissed his forehead. Before she turned out the light, he whispered, "Why don't you talk to him much?" Gloria froze. She sat back down. "Because some people speak less when they're figuring things out." He nodded slowly. "Okay." Down the hall, Silas stood outside his study door, listening. He didn't enter. He didn't interrupt. And that was the pattern. Manuel noticed his presence, but didn't understand the distance. Gloria noticed everything and didn't explain any of it. The first headline broke 3 weeks after the courthouse ceremony. Billionaire CEO marries unknown woman. Strategic or scandal? By noon, Gloria's face was plastered on gossip blogs. Low-resolution photos from outside the hospital, a shaky video from the courthouse, one image of her stepping into Silas's car, looking down, trying not to be seen. The speculation began immediately. Some called it a merger. Others spun theories about a secret pregnancy. A few suggested she had something on him. By the end of the day, contract trended. Gloria sat in the guest room with the TV off, phone on silent. Her name was now public property. Mispronounced, misspelled, misunderstood, but everywhere. She checked the school website. Her job listing had disappeared. She didn't need to ask why. That evening, she stood in the kitchen while the staff avoided her eyes. "I didn't ask for this," she muttered under her breath. No one replied. Silas entered through the back hallway, phone pressed to his ear, expression unchanged. He didn't acknowledge the news, didn't mention the media, just poured himself a drink and disappeared upstairs. Gloria stared at the staircase long after he vanished. In the absence of truth, people had filled in their own stories, and none of them included the boy whose surgery was scheduled in 2 weeks. They talked about her dress, her posture, her worth. They missed the only fact that mattered. She had said yes to save a life. It got worse before it faded. A blurred photo from the estate gate. A headline with her last name twisted into a pun. Anonymous sources claiming she targeted Silas through the hospital foundation. The word that stuck hardest, gold digger. It echoed through the comment sections, attached to her face like a second skin. Gloria didn't respond. She deleted every app from her phone, stopped opening email, and asked the house staff to withhold her mail, not out of fear, but out of self-preservation. Still, the words found her. Whispers in grocery aisles when she took Manuel for fresh fruit. Raised eyebrows at the clinic when she showed her ID. The world had already decided what she was. But Gloria kept her head high. When Manuel asked her why people were staring, she told him, because people like stories more than facts. At night, when he was asleep, she sat on the edge of her bed and stared at the window. She remembered her old apartment, the sounds of the street, the way no one cared who you were because everyone was too tired to judge. Here, in a mansion full of silence, everyone watched, even from afar. One day, a neighbor sent a bouquet of flowers with a note that read, "You must have played your cards right." She didn't reply, just threw it in the trash. She knew what the world saw when they looked at her, but she also knew the truth. She hadn't played cards. She had folded everything, her pride, her safety, her comfort, for her son, and she'd do it again. Silas never addressed the rumors, not once. No press release, no statement, no correction. He went to board meetings like nothing had changed. When the media shouted questions at the gates, the security team blocked them off. Gloria waited, once, thinking maybe he'd speak up, defend her, offer clarity, not to the world but to her. He didn't. At dinner one evening, she looked across the long table and asked, "Why do you let them talk?" He cut into his food. "Because anything I say gives them more to say." She stared at him. "So, you'll protect your brand, but not my name?" He looked up. "Your name doesn't need protection. You don't flinch." She pushed her plate aside. "That's not strength, that's survival." He didn't respond. Gloria left the table early that night. The silence between them grew, not louder, but sharper. Still, she didn't leave. She stayed. For Manuel. For the surgery. For the timeline. She focused on the essentials, appointments, medications, rest. She refused to give the headlines more than they'd already taken. And inside her silence, something deeper began to take root, a steadiness. Because every day she stayed upright, every time she held her son's hand while the world sneered, she felt herself harden where it mattered and soften where it counted. It wasn't love she was building. It was backbone. And that, more than anything, made her untouchable. The surgery was scheduled for 6:30 a.m. They arrived at the hospital before sunrise. Manuel clung to her the entire ride. Gloria held him close, brushing his hair with her fingers, whispering the story he always asked for. "The lion wins? The lion always wins," she said softly. Silas walked a step behind them the whole way. Inside the pre-op room, the nurses prepared Manuel. He asked if she'd be there when he woke up. Gloria kissed his forehead. "I'll be right here." He didn't ask about Silas. He didn't have to. When the doctors wheeled him in, Gloria stayed strong until the doors closed. Then she sat down in the waiting area and covered her face. The minutes moved slowly. The hallway filled and emptied. Nurses came and went. Silas sat on the opposite end of the room, unreadable as always. He didn't speak, didn't fidget, didn't leave. As the hours passed, the daylight changed, casting different shadows on the floor tiles. Still, he stayed. At 4 p.m., the surgeon came out with an update. "He's stable. The procedure went well." Gloria exhaled deeply. Her knees buckled slightly. Silas was already on his feet. They didn't hug. They didn't speak. But when Gloria finally stepped outside later that night to take a breath, she saw him through the glass doors, still seated in the exact same spot. He had stayed the entire day, without phones, without press, just presence. And for the first time since they signed the contract, she allowed herself to wonder if maybe, just maybe, not everything about this agreement was written in paper. Silas never asked to hold Manuel's hand. He never tried to make him laugh, never brought toys, never forced himself into fatherhood. Instead, he asked for documents. Every evening after work, he'd return home and sit with a stack of medical files. He read every note from the surgeons, every progress chart from the therapists. He memorized dosages and side effects and risks. Gloria once passed by his office and saw 2 highlighters on the desk, along with a notepad filled with his tight handwriting. The folder with Manuel's name on it was open in front of him. A textbook on pediatric recovery sat next to it. The next morning, he drove them to the hospital and walked Manuel down to the therapy wing himself. The nurse offered to escort him. Silas declined. He stayed in the hallway, leaning on the doorframe, watched the session through the glass without interrupting. Later, the therapist walked over. "You're Mr. Connor?" Silas nodded. "You ask more questions than most parents," she said. "I don't have the right to be careless," he replied. She didn't know what that meant, but Gloria did. He came again the next day, and the next, sometimes with coffee for the staff, sometimes alone. When Gloria asked him why, he answered simply, "Because he'll notice if I don't." He never asked for thanks. He never posted photos. He simply showed up every single day. And slowly, the silence between them began to shift, not with words, but with time and consistency. Silas wasn't performing. He was learning, not how to be a father, but how to be present. It started with a look. Manuel glanced at Silas once during a therapy break and didn't look away. The next time, he waved. By the end of the week, he asked a question. "Do you have a lion name too?" Silas blinked. "A what?" "A lion name," Manuel explained seriously. "Mom says I'm brave, so I picked one." "What is it?" "Maximus." Silas smiled slightly. "Then I guess I need one." Manuel considered. "You can be Nero." "Sounds strong." "Nero it is," Silas said with a nod. That was the first time Manuel smiled at him, really smiled. From that point on, he'd ask if Nero was coming to his sessions. He'd save him a seat beside his coloring pages. Once, he handed Silas a crayon and told him to help fill the sky. Silas didn't hesitate. He filled in the clouds without complaint. At home, Manuel started to linger in the hall when Silas entered the room, not out of fear, but curiosity. One afternoon, Gloria found them both in the living room, surrounded by flashcards. Manuel was reading words aloud, and Silas was holding each one steady. "Why are you helping?" Manuel asked between cards. Silas looked at him. "Because you matter." The boy tilted his head. "Even if I'm not your real kid," Silas answered carefully, "you're real, and I'm here. That's what matters." Manuel nodded and kept reading. The conversations were never long, never forced. But they added up. Little by little, wall by wall, the distance between them shrank, not because Silas asked for it, but because Manuel gave it. Not through declarations, but through trust. The night after a tough physical therapy session, Manuel fell asleep on the couch in the living room. Gloria went to lift him, but he stirred and wrapped his arms tighter around the blanket. Silas stood beside them. "Let him rest." She nodded and stepped back. Minutes passed. The only light came from the hallway. Silas sat on the floor nearby, back against the arm of the couch, watching Manuel's chest rise and fall. The boy opened his eyes halfway. "You still here?" he mumbled. Silas leaned forward. "I am." Manuel's hand reached out, fingers grazing Silas's sleeve. "Don't go," he whispered. "You stay." Silas swallowed hard. "I'm not going anywhere." The boy drifted back to sleep, hand still holding his shirt. Gloria stood frozen in the doorway. She hadn't been seen. She watched the man who once negotiated a marriage with cold logic sit silently beside the boy he didn't ask for, but was beginning to choose. There was no camera, no press, just a quiet moment that meant everything. Silas didn't try to move him. He sat there for another hour, adjusting the blanket when it slipped, never checking his phone once. When Gloria walked in to carry Manuel upstairs, she didn't say a word. Silas stood and helped her, gentle with the weight. They tucked him in together. Before leaving the room, Silas placed the stuffed lion at Manuel's side. Then he turned to Gloria. His voice was low. "I meant it." She nodded once. "I know." And for the first time, she didn't feel alone in the weight of it all. The change wasn't loud. It came in quiet gestures, short sentences, small consistency. Silas stopped leaving early for work. He adjusted meetings so he could attend Manuel's checkups. When Gloria made tea, she started bringing 2 cups instead of 1. When Silas cleaned up the dinner plates, she didn't stop him. They were no longer passing each other. They were coexisting with intention. One evening, Gloria stood at the top of the stairs, listening to Silas and Manuel in the library downstairs. "No, lions don't wear hats," Silas said, mock serious. "They do if they're royal," Manuel replied, giggling. "Where's the law on that?" "I make the law," the boy declared. Silas laughed, a rare, soft sound. Gloria closed her eyes and let it settle. This wasn't romance, not yet, but it was something real, something that couldn't be written into a contract or faked for optics. She'd spent so long expecting disappointment, bracing for the day Silas would detach, withdraw, vanish into business, but he hadn't. He stayed, not because the world demanded it, but because something inside him had shifted, and he let it. She walked into the library as Manuel ran over to her. "Mom," he said, "we're writing lion laws." "Are you now?" she asked. Silas held up a notepad filled with drawings and scribbles. "He's the judge," he said, nodding to Manuel. Gloria laughed. A small sound, but genuine. Their eyes met. No declarations, no promises, just understanding. Something had changed, and for once it wasn't terrifying. It was welcome. It started with the sound of heels. Sharp, confident, clicks against marble that didn't expect unannounced visitors. Gloria was in the hallway near the front of the estate, sorting through Manuel's drawings when the door opened without a knock. A woman stepped inside, tall, poised, and dressed in a black blazer that screamed boardroom power. Her lipstick was the kind of red that drew eyes. Her expression said she was used to attention, and preferred it. "Nia Clark," she said, glancing at the butler who moved too slowly to stop her. Gloria stood still. Nia's eyes landed on her like a scan. "You must be the reason his phone's been silent. I wasn't aware he owed you calls," Gloria replied. Nia smiled, all teeth. "Silas and I don't need permission to talk. We have history." "I'm sure you do," Gloria said, folding Manuel's paper neatly. "But this isn't the past." Just then, Silas stepped into view from the stairwell, pausing at the landing. His expression didn't shift, but the temperature in the room changed. "Nia," he said, voice flat. Finally she replied, "I've been waiting weeks." "For what?" he asked. "To see what a contract wife looks like up close." Silas didn't respond. Gloria didn't flinch. The staff stood awkwardly at the edges, unsure whether to leave or intervene. "I didn't come to fight," Nia added. "I came to remind you what real looks like." Silas's jaw tightened, and Gloria stood her ground. There was no welcome here, and Nia wasn't used to that. Nia took a step forward, eyes narrowing at Gloria. "You replaced me with this?" she asked, tone dipped in mockery. "I thought you had standards." Gloria didn't blink. "I'm not here to impress you." "No," Nia replied, circling slowly. "You're here to collect checks and play pretend." Silas stepped down from the stairs. "That's enough." Nia turned toward him, wounded pride rising fast. "You defended women like her before, from a distance. Now you're married to one." "She's not just a woman," Silas said evenly. "She's my wife." Nia scoffed. "Your board must be thrilled." "I don't make decisions for the board," he said. "And I don't take insults aimed at people under my roof." Gloria said nothing. Her arms were folded, but her eyes, steady and sharp, never left Nia. "She's convenient," Nia continued. "She's your way out. You think this buys you time, image, power?" "No," Silas interrupted. "It buys Manuel a future, and it gave me clarity." Nia's voice wavered. "You're serious?" "Deadly." A beat passed. "Leave," he said quietly. "You don't talk to me like this," she snapped. "I do now." Gloria looked away then, not because she felt small, but because she recognized something bigger than the insult. Silas wasn't defending her to win points. He was defending her because it was the right thing to do. And Nia, for all her confidence, looked suddenly unsure of what to say. She glanced at Gloria one last time. "You won't last," she said. "You're not built for his world." Gloria tilted her head. "I'm not built for games. That's why I win quietly." Nia's mouth opened, then shut. And that was the last word. Nia's departure wasn't subtle. She left the estate with her head held high, but her stride faltered just slightly at the edge of the walkway, enough for the staff to notice. Word spread fast. An uninvited visit. A confrontation in the main hall. Silas raising his voice, something he rarely did. By evening, the household staff whispered. The board heard. 2 journalists emailed the foundation's press team for comments. Gloria received a text from a friend back in the city. "Who's the woman in heels that just got tossed off your front step?" She didn't reply. Silas stayed in his study for most of the day. Doors closed. No meetings. No calls. He didn't need to clean up the scene. He didn't need to post an explanation. Because everything that needed to be said had already been said. Out loud, in public, in front of witnesses. The shift was real. Not a performance. Not a scene arranged for damage control. But a line drawn in full view of the people who used to believe Silas only protected power and image. Now, he'd chosen a side. And even Nia, with her polished confidence, couldn't mask the sting of being told she no longer had a place. Gloria didn't gloat. She went to the garden with Manuel and watered the plants like she did every evening. When he asked why the lady with the sharp shoes left so fast, she simply said, "Because this is our home, not hers." He nodded. Later, when they sat on the porch, Silas joined them without invitation. He didn't bring up Nia. He didn't have to. The silence wasn't heavy this time. It was mutual, and for once, it felt like they weren't surviving under the same roof. They were holding it up together. That night, Gloria stood in the upstairs hallway outside Silas's office. The door was open. He sat at the edge of his desk, sleeves rolled, tie loose, eyes fixed on the floor. She walked in slowly. "You didn't have to do that," she said. He looked up. "Yes, I did." "She'll talk," Gloria added. "She'll find a microphone." "Let her," he said. She stepped closer. "That wasn't about control." "No," he said. "It was about respect." Gloria leaned against the doorway. "You didn't say it for show." "I said it because no one talks to my wife like that." She absorbed the words quietly. There was no agenda in his voice, no strategy, just conviction. "You didn't even look at me for weeks when I moved in," she said, half smiling. "I was adjusting," he admitted, "to being around someone who didn't ask for anything, but gave everything." That silenced her more than the insults ever could. He looked at her. "You've handled more than I ever will, and I let people doubt you." She crossed her arms. "You fixed it today." He stood, not to fix it, to end it. Their eyes held. For the first time, Gloria didn't wonder if he meant his words. She believed them. When she left the office, she didn't close the door behind her. She didn't need to, because the man behind it had finally stepped out, not just of the room, but of the shell he'd hidden in since the day this arrangement began. The first time Silas cancelled a meeting, it caught his assistant off guard. "You have a quarterly call with the Asia division," she reminded him. "Reschedule it." There was a pause on the other end. "May I ask why?" "I have a family appointment," he said. He didn't explain further. That afternoon, he sat beside Gloria and Manuel in the clinic waiting room for a routine follow-up. No press, no entourage. He read through the checklist with Gloria, marked the post-surgery diet plan, and held the clipboard while she spoke with the nurse. He didn't hover. He didn't dominate the conversation. He simply stayed. The next week, he skipped a high-profile investor lunch to attend Manuel's school assessment. When Gloria asked him why, he said, "I want to understand how he learns." Another time, she found him at the kitchen counter reviewing Manuel's daily report from therapy. He circled improvement points and made notes like it was a financial audit. "You take it seriously," she said. He didn't look up. "Of course I do." Gloria watched him start waking earlier, going to bed later, rearranging his work hours to fit theirs. It wasn't dramatic, but it was consistent. Each time he showed up when he didn't have to, Gloria's guard shifted slightly. Not down, but sideways. Because the version of Silas who used to move through life with purpose but no pause was now standing still. And not because he was forced, because he wanted to. And that, more than anything, felt like a new chapter neither of them had seen coming. The storm rolled in without warning. By evening, the sky had darkened and the wind picked up fast. A branch snapped near the garden, and before the backup system could switch on, the estate fell into complete darkness. Gloria lit a few candles in the living room while Manuel slept upstairs. Silas entered quietly, holding a flashlight, then set it down and took a seat on the opposite couch. The glow flickered between them. No phones, no buzzing devices, no screens, just the soft crackle of wind outside and the muted hum of rain against the windows. "I forgot what silence sounds like," Gloria said, arms wrapped around her knees. Silas nodded. "It's not always uncomfortable." They sat without speaking for several minutes. The distance between the couches wasn't much, but the quiet made it feel closer. Outside, the power outage had paused the world. Inside, it had paused their routines. For once, there was nothing to plan, track, or explain. Just stillness. Gloria stood and walked to the window. Silas watched her silhouette move. She stared at the trees swaying in the dark. "It's the first time this house doesn't feel heavy," she said. He didn't respond right away. Then maybe we needed the lights off to see clearer. She turned back to face him. The air between them didn't feel like it had before. It wasn't cold. It wasn't tense. It felt like possibility, not romance, not desire. Just room to breathe. And that, for Gloria, was more intimate than any kiss could have been. They remained in the living room even after the storm settled. The candles burned low, casting softer shadows. Silas leaned back, hands clasped, eyes on the ceiling. Gloria pulled the blanket tighter around her and spoke without looking at him. "I don't trust easily." He turned to her. "I know. I second-guess everything," she continued. "Even when people show up, I wait for them to disappear." Silas let her speak. "Everyone I ever counted on eventually left, some quietly, some with noise. But they left." There was no bitterness in her tone, just fact. Silas said nothing for a long moment. Then, "Neither do I." She looked over, surprised. He leaned forward. "People chase what I have, not who I am. I learned that early." Gloria tilted her head. "And you think I'm different?" "I know you are," he said. The room fell still again. "You didn't want this," she said. "Neither did you," he replied. "And yet, here we are." "Still here," he echoed. The clock ticked once, quietly. It felt louder than it should have. "You're not easy to understand," she said softly. "I don't want to be," he answered. She smirked. "Well, at least you're honest." He met her eyes. "That's all I have." She nodded slowly. "I don't need promises. I don't offer them lightly," he said. That moment didn't end with a confession. It didn't need to. It ended with shared awareness. Neither of them had arrived at this place through love, but they were both staying through something far more rare: respect. The storm passed. The lights didn't come back on. It was past midnight. They didn't move from the living room. Gloria sat cross-legged on the couch, head resting back, half watching the candle flicker. Silas shifted, eyes tracing the shape of her in the low light. She looked at him. Neither of them smiled. He spoke first. "Can I ask you something?" She nodded. "Are you tired of pretending?" She let out a breath. "I stopped pretending weeks ago." A pause. Silas reached out. Not suddenly, not confidently. Slowly, palm up, between the couch cushions. His hand waited, open, not expectant. Gloria glanced at it. She didn't speak. She placed her hand in his. His fingers curled, gently. Their palms met. Their hands stayed there, linked, unmoving. There was no kiss, no dramatic pull closer, no rush, just contact. Real, grounded, human. It wasn't about romance. It wasn't about roles. It was a small decision to stop being strangers, to start sharing the weight. After a while, Gloria rested her head against the couch cushion, still holding his hand, her eyes closed. Silas didn't move, and in that moment, under soft candlelight and complete silence, something changed. Not in them, but between them. Not a fairy tale, something better, something earned. It didn't change overnight. There was no switch, no sudden turning point. But one morning, as Silas passed Gloria in the hallway, she made a quiet comment about his choice of socks. Striped, mismatched, clearly pulled from the wrong drawer. He looked down. It was dark. She smiled. "So was the drawer, I guess." He stared at her for a second, then let out a quiet laugh. Nothing forced. Just real. That laugh became a crack in the routine, a shift in their pattern. At breakfast the next day, Gloria asked if he always read the paper upside down. He looked up. It was upside down. She smirked. He flipped it, pretending he meant to. Later, during Manuel's reading hour, Silas fumbled over a character voice. Gloria giggled from the kitchen. "That's the worst lion impression I've ever heard." "It's a work in progress," he said dryly. "Don't quit your day job." "I might," he replied. "You'd miss me." She didn't deny it. The estate began to feel different, lighter. They still kept their distance, still moved with caution. But there were moments, small and unplanned, where the silence between them was no longer tense. It was comfortable. Shared space turned into shared smiles. Shared smiles turned into glances held longer than needed. Not out of longing, out of recognition. They were still guarded, still healing, still remembering this marriage hadn't started from love. But they had arrived at something more stable than survival, and maybe more honest than love at first sight. The shift stayed quiet. They didn't talk about it. They didn't redefine their relationship, didn't sit down and label what was changing. There were no speeches or declarations, just closeness that didn't demand anything. Silas started joining Gloria in the kitchen, not to help, but to be near. He sat at the counter while she chopped vegetables, asking about recipes, making dry remarks that earned half smiles. Gloria stopped flinching when he stood beside her, stopped bracing. One night, while folding laundry together, something unplanned and unspoken, his hand grazed hers. She didn't move away. He didn't try again, but they both felt it. Another night, after Manuel fell asleep, they sat in the garden under the soft evening air. No candles, no wine, just them. He asked her how she was, genuinely. She answered honestly, briefly, and they let the silence do the rest. There was no urgency, no reaching for something more than what was present. What existed between them wasn't built on longing. It was built on respect, rhythm, and permission to simply be. Gloria appreciated that he never crossed a line. Silas appreciated that she never forced a gate open. They held space for each other, and the intimacy, though subtle, grew. Not through touch, but through presence. Not through confessions, but through comfort. In that stillness, their story wasn't romantic. It was human. And in many ways, that was far more rare. They didn't notice the pattern forming at first, but it was there. Silas started pouring 2 cups of coffee in the morning. One for him, one left by the stove for Gloria. No note, no conversation, but she always found it, exactly how she liked it. She began to leave the light on in the hallway when she went to bed, just in case he passed by and wanted to check in on Manuel. He did. Sometimes, Gloria would wake to the sound of retreating footsteps. She never mentioned it, but once she found the lion-stuffed toy tucked in tighter than she remembered leaving it. One evening, she walked into the living room to find Silas and Manuel asleep, both on opposite ends of the couch, books still open on their laps. Silas's head had tilted slightly, posture relaxed in a way she hadn't seen before. She didn't wake them. She sat on the floor and read in silence. In the kitchen, they moved in sync. She passed him the salt before he asked. He wiped the counter without being told. She rolled her sleeves when he reached for the dish towel. It wasn't choreographed. It was practiced without planning. There were times their hands would brush, and neither of them flinched. Glances held longer than necessary. Smiles offered without reason. The house didn't feel like a contract anymore. It felt lived in. Manuel, watching from his corner, noticed it too. One night, as Gloria tucked him in, he asked, "Do you like him now?" She paused. "He's easy to like when he's quiet." The boy laughed. But inside, she knew it was more than that. She liked the version of Silas who paid attention. The one who didn't speak when silence was needed. The one who didn't try to win, but chose to show up. These weren't grand gestures. These were the moments that made a home feel whole. And every time one passed between them, it stitched something steady beneath their arrangement. The house was quiet. Manuel had fallen asleep early after a long day. Gloria stood at the balcony outside her room, arms folded, watching the night settle over the estate. She didn't hear Silas approach, but when she turned, he was there, leaning against the doorframe, watching her but not imposing. "I didn't want to interrupt," he said softly. "You didn't." He stepped beside her, close, but not crowding. They looked out over the garden. The wind moved the trees gently. No words filled the space. Gloria spoke first. "Do you regret it?" He looked at her. "The contract?" She nodded. He exhaled. "No, not even a little. Not even a little." She turned toward him fully. There was no tension, no heavy breath, just stillness between them. Silas reached up, slowly, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. His hand stayed there a second longer than necessary. She didn't pull away. He stepped closer, eyes steady, voice low. "This isn't part of the deal." "I know," she whispered. His lips brushed hers, once, not searching, not taking, just a question. She answered by leaning in, pressing her mouth to his, gently, slowly. The kiss wasn't deep, it wasn't heated. It was quiet, like the moment had been waiting for them to notice it. When they pulled apart, neither spoke. They didn't need to. That kiss wasn't about longing or possession. It wasn't about fixing what had been broken. It was acknowledgement that something real had grown here. It had taken time, it had taken restraint, but it had arrived, and for the first time the contract felt irrelevant. What held them together now wasn't ink, it was intention. The meeting was scheduled without his approval. Silas arrived late and knew it the moment he stepped into the boardroom. The mood was off. Seats filled, phones face down, eyes waiting. The chairwoman spoke first. "We need to address the marriage." Silas didn't sit. "There's nothing to address." "There is," another board member replied. "The contract." That word landed heavy. Silas's jaw tightened. "That agreement is sealed and fragile," the chairwoman said. "Public perception has shifted. Investors are uneasy." Silas leaned forward. "My private life is not a bargaining chip." A man across the table slid a folder forward. "Your private life is already tied to the company." Silas opened it. Inside were copies, signatures, dates, legal language he recognized all too well. "You wouldn't," he said flatly. "We will," the chairwoman replied. "If the marriage continues to interfere with corporate confidence." Silas laughed once. No humor. "You're threatening my wife." "We're protecting the company," she corrected. "If exposure pressures you into compliance, so be it." He straightened. "She is not involved in your politics. She's the leverage," someone said plainly. The room went silent. Silas felt something shift, not fear, anger. "You will not use her," he said. The chairwoman met his stare. "Then control her." Silas stepped back. "This conversation is over." He left the room without permission, heart pounding for the first time in years. Not for himself. For the woman who never agreed to be part of this war. Gloria hadn't meant to listen. She was halfway down the hallway outside Silas's study when she heard raised voices. She stopped instinctively, heart slowing as words slipped through the cracked door. "She doesn't know," a voice said. "That makes her effective," another replied. Gloria pressed her hand against the wall. "She's the pressure point," someone added. "If she leaves, he folds." Gloria felt her stomach drop. Silas's voice came next. "You will not touch her, but she already belongs to the deal," the chairwoman said. She signed, "belongs." Gloria stepped back quietly, her breath shallow. Every sound felt loud, every step measured. So this was it. The reason for the distance, the restraint, the sudden attention from the board. She wasn't a partner. She was leverage. She returned to her room slowly and closed the door behind her. The walls felt closer than before. She sat on the bed and stared at the floor. Every memory replayed with new clarity. The silence, the hesitation, the looks exchanged behind closed doors. She hadn't been imagining the tension. She'd been standing inside it. When Silas knocked an hour later, she didn't answer. He tried again. "Gloria." She stood and opened the door. Her face was calm, too calm. "I heard everything," she said. Silas froze. "You didn't tell me," she continued. "You let them decide where I fit." "I was handling it," he said quickly. "No," she replied. "You were managing me." He stepped forward. "That's not fair." "Neither is being used," she said. "And I won't stay where I'm currency." Silas reached for her arm. She stepped back. "I didn't survive everything I've survived to become someone's pressure point," she said. Then she turned away and began to pack. Gloria packed without anger. That surprised her. She folded clothes carefully, placed Manuel's books in his bag, set aside the lion stuffed toy and tucked it into his backpack. Her movements were steady. Silas stood in the doorway, silent, watching the life he hadn't meant to fracture slip through his fingers. "You don't have to leave," he said. She didn't look at him. "I do. They won't touch you," he insisted. "I won't let them." "You already did," she replied. He stepped closer. "I was protecting you." "No," she said softly. "You were protecting control." She zipped the suitcase. I won't be used, she repeated. Not by you, not by them. Manuel stirred from the bed. Mom? She crossed the room immediately. Hey, she whispered. It's okay. Are we moving again? She nodded. Just for a bit. Silas knelt beside the bed. I'll still be here. Gloria looked at him. That's not your choice anymore. Manuel reached for Silas's hand. You said you'd stay. Silas swallowed. I meant it. Gloria stood. Then respect this. She lifted the suitcase. Silas stepped aside. She paused at the door. You should have told me. He nodded. I should have. Then she left. No shouting, no tears, just a line drawn with clarity, and for the first time since the contract began, Gloria chose herself. The contract sat in Silas's study drawer. He stared at it for a long time. Pages of language, clauses, conditions, control disguised as order. He picked it up and tore it in half, then again, and again. The sound was sharp. Final. When he finished, he sat down, elbows on his knees, and breathed. 3 days passed, no calls, no board meetings, no assistants. On the 4th day, he drove alone to the park, where Gloria took Manuel in the afternoons. No suit, no driver, just him. He found her on a bench, watching Manuel play. She didn't look surprised when she saw him. I'm not here with an offer, he said, or a condition. She waited. I ended it, he continued. The contract, the leverage, the board's control. She studied him. Why? Because I chose wrong before, he said, and I won't do it again. He reached into his jacket and pulled out the torn papers. Let them fall at his feet. Stay, he said. Not because you have to. Not because it saves anything. She stood slowly. Stay because you choose me. Silence stretched. Manuel ran over, smiling. You came. Silas smiled back. I did. Gloria looked at the ground, then at him. This isn't forgiveness, she said. I know, and I won't be owned. I don't want to own you. She took a breath, then nodded once. Then we talk, she said. And for the first time, the choice was hers. Gloria didn't leave angry. She didn't slam doors. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't look back when she walked out of the estate for the last time. Strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it walks quietly, with a child's hand in one palm and self-respect in the other. She moved into a smaller apartment on the edge of the city. Modest, clean, light-filled. It wasn't grand, but it was theirs. Hers and Manuel's. She picked up work at a nearby community center and began tutoring again at the library twice a week. She didn't check the news, didn't look up Silas, didn't wait for a knock on the door. She woke up each morning and brewed her own coffee. She walked Manuel to the park after school. They read books at night, just like before, only now, with less tension under the surface. Manuel didn't ask about Silas often, but when he did, Gloria answered simply. He's figuring some things out, and that was true. But so was she. She was remembering who she had been before the hospital bills and contract signatures, before silence-filled hallways and strangers called her a wife without asking who she was. She was healing, not because someone else decided she was worthy, but because she never stopped being. Her love for Silas hadn't disappeared. It had simply stepped aside so her dignity could walk forward first. She loved what they could have had, but not at the cost of being someone's convenience, not at the cost of becoming invisible. So she walked, not from bitterness, but from clarity. And for the first time in years, every step felt like her own. Silas didn't show up right away. He gave her space. Not because it was easy, but because it was necessary. 3 weeks passed. He didn't fill the silence with calls. He didn't send gifts. He didn't try to explain himself through anyone else. Instead, he listened to what wasn't said, to what her absence felt like. He met with his legal team and formally dissolved the remaining board contracts tied to his personal life. He transferred funds for Manuel's future, directly to a private trust in Gloria's name, with no conditions. Then he waited, until he was sure he was no longer coming from guilt, but from growth. On a Thursday afternoon, he parked his car near the edge of Roosevelt Park and sat in silence for 10 minutes before stepping out. He spotted them easily. Gloria on the bench, Manuel running in circles around a patch of grass, holding a plastic dinosaur in one hand and his jacket in the other. Silas didn't rush. He walked with intention, nothing in his hands, no speech in his mouth, just himself. As he approached, Gloria looked up. She didn't flinch, didn't frown. She simply met his gaze with steady eyes. He stopped a few feet away. "You found us," she said. "I hoped you wouldn't make it impossible," he replied. She looked toward Manuel. "He's doing better. I see that." Silence passed. It wasn't heavy. He rubbed his palms together and exhaled. "I'm not here to fix anything." "Good," she said, "because I'm not broken." He smiled slightly. "I'm here because I still want this." Gloria nodded once. "Keep going." And he did. Silas wore no suit, no watch, no mask, just jeans, a plain shirt, and shoes still dusty from the walk. He stepped closer, voice low. "I'm not asking to be welcomed back as a reward." Gloria studied him carefully. "Then what are you asking for?" He took a slow breath. "I'm asking to be seen." She didn't blink. "I don't want the version of us that needed conditions," he continued. "I want the version that survived them." Gloria looked down at her hands, folded in her lap. "You didn't just lose my trust, Silas. You gave it away." "I know. You let them weaponize me." He nodded. "And I tore it all down because of that. Not to win you back, but to be worth standing near you again." A child's laugh rang out nearby. Manuel held up the toy dinosaur to a group of kids and chased them in circles. Silas smiled softly at the sound. Gloria followed his gaze. He looked back at her. "You don't owe me anything. I came with no plan. Just the truth." She tilted her head. "And what's that?" "That I still love you. That I never stopped choosing you, even when I got lost in protecting what didn't matter." Silence. "I won't ask you to forget," he said. "But I'm here if you ever want to build something that doesn't come with paperwork." He reached into his pocket, pulled out a folded photo. Manuel's drawing, the one with 3 stick figures holding hands. He set it on the bench between them. "No pressure," he said. Then he stepped back. "I'll be nearby." She stared at the drawing. 3 figures. A lion in the corner. A sun above their heads. She remembered when Manuel drew it and called it our real family. Back when nothing felt real. She looked at Silas, already starting to walk away. Gloria stood. "Wait." He stopped. She walked up to him, slowly, calmly, eyes locked on his. "This isn't a restart," she said. "We're not pretending the mess never happened." "I don't want to," he said. She nodded. "And if I say yes, it won't be because I'm returning to anything." "Understood. It's because I saw what you did when no one was watching." Silas held her gaze. "I saw the man who stayed," she said. "Even when I left." He didn't speak. She stepped closer. "So, here's my answer." She reached out and took his hand. Yes, a simple word, no applause, no crowd, just truth. Silas's fingers closed around hers. "I don't have a ring," he said. "I don't need one," she replied. "Not this time." He leaned in, only slightly. She placed her forehead against his. They stood like that for a moment, breathing together. Then Manuel ran up. "Did I miss something?" Gloria laughed. "No, baby. You helped us remember something." "What's that?" Silas smiled down at him. "That family is a choice, and we just made ours." They walked out of the park, hand in hand, no destination spoken. Just one shared direction, and this time, no one was leading alone. The backyard didn't look like a venue. There were no banners, no photographers, no catered tables lined in rows. Just a stretch of green grass, a modest wooden table, and sunlight drifting through the leaves overhead. The garden had been Gloria's idea. "Inside feels like too much," she'd said earlier that morning. Out here feels honest. Silas agreed without question. The air carried the smell of grilled vegetables and warm bread. A soft breeze moved through the trees, lifting the edges of the tablecloth. Wind chimes clinked faintly near the fence. It wasn't a party. It wasn't an announcement. It was a moment. Neighbors passed by without stopping. No one knew who lived there now. No one cared. And that was the point. For the first time in a long while, there was nothing to prove. Gloria stood near the garden bed, checking the plates, adjusting napkins she'd already straightened twice. She paused, took a breath, and looked around. This was what peace looked like, when it didn't try to impress. No applause, no witnesses, just space to breathe. Silas watched her from across the yard, holding a chair under one arm, listening to Manuel hum to himself near the flower pots. He felt lighter here, not because the world had changed, but because he had, and for once, the quiet didn't feel empty. It felt earned. Gloria wore a light sundress the color of late afternoon. Nothing fitted, nothing structured. It moved when she walked, caught the breeze when she stopped. Her hair was loose, falling naturally over her shoulders. She wasn't dressed for anyone but herself. Manuel stood beside her, his hand tucked into hers, swinging their arms back and forth as they walked through the grass. He wore a clean shirt and sneakers with grass stains already forming on the toes. "Do we get cake?" he asked. She smiled down at him. Eventually, he nodded, satisfied. They stopped near the table, and Gloria crouched to adjust his collar. Her fingers lingered at his neckline, smoothing fabric, grounding herself in the moment. "You feeling okay?" she asked softly. He nodded. "I ran twice." "That's good," she said, brushing his cheek. He grinned and leaned into her touch. Gloria straightened slowly, eyes scanning the yard again. She caught Silas watching them. He didn't look away when their eyes met. There was no tension in her chest now, no urge to shield or prepare. Just awareness. She squeezed Manuel's hand gently. This was what she had fought for. Not security wrapped in contracts, not comfort handed down with conditions, but mornings that didn't begin with fear, afternoons that allowed laughter, evenings that felt unguarded. She had learned that love wasn't loud. It showed up quietly, stayed steady, asked nothing unreasonable. She stood taller, shoulders relaxed, grounded in the knowledge that she hadn't lost herself to get here. She had chosen every step, and now she was standing exactly where she wanted to be. Silas knelt near the table, tightening a loose bolt on one of the chairs. He had already fixed it twice, but this time he took his time. There was no rush. He wore a simple shirt, sleeves rolled, hands marked with faint scratches from earlier work in the garden. No watch, no jacket, nothing that suggested boardrooms or deadlines. He stood, tested the chair, then moved to the next one. Manuel wandered over and squatted beside him. "That one's crooked." Silas smiled. "Good eye. Mom says crooked things fall if you don't fix them." "That's wise advice," Silas said. "You should listen to her." "I do," Manuel replied. "Mostly." Silas laughed, a sound that came easily now. He stood and wiped his hands on his jeans, glancing toward Gloria. She was watching him again, not with hesitation, with recognition. The man adjusting chairs wasn't trying to redeem himself. He wasn't performing. He was participating. And that difference mattered. Silas had spent years earning power, authority, control. None of it had prepared him for this feeling. The quiet satisfaction of being useful in small ways. The grounding comfort of knowing where he belonged. He pulled out another chair, lined it up carefully, and stepped back. For the first time, he didn't feel like he was waiting for something to be taken away. He felt present. And present was enough. They gathered around the table as the sun dipped lower. Gloria set down the serving bowls. Silas pulled out chairs. Manuel climbed into his seat and immediately reached for the bread. "No rush," Gloria said, laughing. They sat. No speeches, no announcements, no one checking a phone. The food passed from hand to hand. Conversation drifted easily. Stories about school, about burnt toast that morning, about nothing important and everything meaningful. Silas poured water into Gloria's glass without asking. She thanked him quietly. Manuel talked with his mouth full. Gloria scolded him gently. Silas backed her up. Normal, simple, perfect in its ordinariness. The world beyond the fence didn't intrude. No board members, no reporters, no contracts waiting to be signed. Just a family sharing a meal under open sky. At one point, Gloria leaned back in her chair and looked at them both. Her son, laughing. The man beside her relaxed, unguarded, fully here. She felt something settle deep in her chest. This wasn't a reward. It was a result of choices made, lines drawn, boundaries respected. Love hadn't arrived with fireworks or demands. It had grown through patience, honesty, and daily effort. She reached for Silas's hand beneath the table. He turned to her, surprised but warm. They shared a look that needed no explanation, and as the light faded and the garden grew quiet, Gloria spoke the truth she'd earned. This time, she said softly, love didn't need terms. To anyone watching this who has ever been undervalued, overlooked, or used, remember this: your worth is not measured by how much you're needed, but by how firmly you choose yourself when it matters most. Love that is real will never require you to shrink. Peace that lasts will never come with conditions. And the family you build, by blood or by choice, starts the moment you say, I will not be reduced. Stand firm, love gently, choose wisely, because the life you want isn't found in someone else's offer. It's found in the power to walk away and mean it.